Jesus is headed for Jerusalem. The cross is ahead. A blind beggar cries out, and the crowd tells him to shut up. Then he calls Jesus, Son of David. Jesus stops, and the blind man's life is changed forever. We're studying Mark 10:46-52. It's the final healing miracle in Mark's Gospel, and the last event before Jesus enters Jerusalem and faces the cross. Let's read verse 46 from the ESV. And they came to Jericho. And as he was leaving Jericho with his disciples and a great crowd, Bartimaeus, a blind beggar, the son of Timaeus, was sitting by the roadside. Where are we? Jericho, but not inside the city of Jericho. Mark tells us that Jesus and his disciples came to Jericho, passed through the city, and left the city with a great crowd in tow. The Messiah's march toward Jerusalem is attracting a crowd. Then Mark tells us that outside the city, presumably near a gate, there was a blind beggar named Bartimaeus. Mark does his readers a favor and provides the meaning of the name. Bartimaeus means the son of Timaeus, which would translate into English as the son of honor, or son of an honored one. He's a blind man, sitting alongside the road near the city gate, begging for enough charity on which to survive. Blindness was often equated with being accursed in the ancient world. Begging made a person socially marginalized and isolated, and the fact that he was seated alongside the road when this event happened means he was actively begging at the time. Does any of this make him sound like a son of honor? But unlike all the other beneficiaries of Jesus' miracles, Mark thought it was important for us to know his name, so we certainly need to take it into consideration. On to verse 47. And when he heard that it was Jesus of Nazareth, he began to cry out and say, Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on me. So Bartimaeus, who cannot see, hears the commotion, and hears that Jesus of Nazareth is passing by, and starts crying out to Jesus. But he doesn't call him Jesus of Nazareth. He calls him Jesus, Son of David. So what? Why does that matter? Those are great questions, but before we answer them, let's stick with the name Jesus for a moment. In Hebrew and Aramaic, the names Jesus and Joshua are essentially the same, Yeshua. And the most famous Old Testament story about Joshua is the battle at Jericho, detailed in Joshua chapters 5 and 6. Joshua's victory happens outside the walls of Jericho, through God's miraculous power. Now, Jesus, Yeshua, is outside the walls of Jericho, in the last event before he goes to Jerusalem. Are there any walls that will fall? Let's see. Bartimaeus is crying out, Son of David, another messianic title, like Son of Man. Is this blind beggar somehow aware of Jesus' genealogy? Does he know that Jesus is a descendant of King David? No. And Mark's audience doesn't know either. Unlike Matthew and Luke, Mark doesn't show historical evidence that Jesus is the Messiah. He shows it through the actions of Jesus. Bartimaeus has only heard about Jesus, but what he has heard has convinced him that Jesus is in fact the long-awaited Messiah, the Son of David. That has been exactly what Mark's Gospel was trying to do, expose people to the words and deeds of Jesus, to lead them to the same conclusion, that Jesus is the Messiah. Like Bartimaeus, you didn't see it, but you heard about him. What did you conclude? On to verse 48. And many rebuked him, telling him to be silent. But he cried out all the more, Son of David, have mercy on me. Why did they rebuke him? Because a blind beggar is an unimportant person of low status. Does that sound familiar? Earlier in this same chapter, people were bringing their unimportant children to be blessed by Jesus, and the disciples rebuked them, just like the crowd is rebuking Bartimaeus. Mark tells us that Bartimaeus was undaunted and cried out all the more. The Greek literally says, he cried out much more. Nothing will interfere with his plea for mercy from the Messiah, no matter how many people tell him to be quiet. Look at verses 49 and 50. And Jesus stopped and said, Call him. And they called the blind man, saying to him, Take heart, Get up, he is calling you." And throwing off his cloak, he sprang up and came to Jesus. Look at the dynamic within the story. Earlier in the chapter, we were told that Jesus was focused and marching toward Jerusalem out in front of everyone else. But when Bartimaeus cries out for mercy, Jesus stopped. He said, "Call him." And members of the same crowd that was trying to silence him now cheer him on. Then Mark tells us something amazing. Throwing off his cloak, he sprang up and went to Jesus. In the first century, beggars, those asking for alms, had sort of a uniform. They were wrapped in a cloak, seated on the ground, usually at a designated place alongside a city or village entrance. So throwing off the cloak is a big deal. Is Bartimaeus anticipating an end to being a beggar? Does throwing off the cloak assume that he won't be needing it anymore? Let me know what you think in the comments. Look at verse 51. "And Jesus said to him, 'What do you want me to do for you?' And the blind man said to him, 'Rabbi, let me recover my sight.'" There's something interesting about Jesus' question. Just prior to this story, Mark told us how James and John went to Jesus privately and asked for him to guarantee them the prime positions at his right and left in his glory. They said, "Teacher, we want you to do for us whatever we ask of you." And he said to them, "What do you want me to do for you?" Now, Jesus asks Bartimaeus the exact same question he asked James and John. "What do you want me to do for you?" James and John asked for powerful and prestigious positions. Bartimaeus simply asks that he might see again, that he might recover his sight. What does that tell us? At some point in time, Bartimaeus had been able to see. One more thing before we move on. Look at how Mark referred to Bartimaeus in verse 51. "And the blind man said to him, 'Rabbi, let me recover my sight.'" Mark reminds his readers, so there is no mistaking what is about to happen, that Bartimaeus is in fact blind. Let's read verse 52. "And Jesus said to him, 'Go your way, your faith has made you well.' And immediately he recovered his sight, and followed him on the way." First, the word translated "go your way" is a command that literally means depart. So what? Why does that matter? Much like the thrown-off cloak, it signals that Jesus isn't sending him back to beg. He tells him to leave this place of begging. Why? Because his faith, his belief that the Messiah could and would show mercy to him and answer his plea, has made him well. There's no reason for him to beg. He's well. Then Mark takes us back to familiar territory. We haven't seen Mark's favorite word in a while, but here it is. Immediately, he recovered his sight. Not gradually, not eventually, immediately. What had Jesus told him to do? Depart. But that's not what Bartimaeus, son of honor, did. Mark says, he followed him on the way. This is sort of a double entendre. Rather than departing, he literally follows Jesus along the road to Jerusalem, a road leading to the cross. But the word follow is what Jesus used to invite people into discipleship. So Bartimaeus following Jesus isn't just about geographic location, but life's vocation. He's not a beggar at the side of the road. He's a disciple of the Messiah, following him on the road to the Passion. So what can we take away from Bartimaeus' story? There's much to see here. What did the crowd see? Initially, they saw a blind beggar, an unimportant person, being a nuisance while they were getting a glimpse of Jesus. What did Bartimaeus see? Despite being blind, he saw the Messiah, the Son of David, God's leader and healer. And he saw an opportunity for his life to be changed. What did Jesus see? The kind of determined and persistent faith that can't be ignored or suppressed. And what did you see? Don't let your circumstances or naysayers in your life hinder your pursuit of Jesus. Just like at Jericho, those walls can be knocked down, and that kind of faith can be rewarded. Next time, Jesus enters Jerusalem, and everything changes. Thanks for studying with me. Is there someone who might benefit from this video today? If so, please share it.